Every single week, all across America, millions of homeowners do the exact same thing after mowing their lawn. They rake up the clippings, they stuff them into paper bags or plastic bins, and they drag them out to the curb like garbage. What if I told you that pile of yard waste sitting by your curb is actually one of the most powerful, nutrient-dense fertilizers nature has ever created, and you've been throwing it away for free, while paying good money for a bottle of something weaker at the garden center? By the end of this video, you're going to look at your lawn completely differently, because there's a simple process, one most gardeners have never heard of, that turns ordinary grass clippings into a fast-acting liquid fertilizer. Under the right conditions, it can produce noticeably greener, sturdier, more vigorous plants in as little as 5 days. No miracle powder. No expensive bag. Just grass, water, and a little bit of know-how. If you've ever felt like you're pouring money into your garden every season, with only average results to show for it, stay with me. This is going to change how you think about everything sitting in your own backyard. Before we go any further, if gardening content like this is useful to you, go ahead and hit subscribe now, because we cover real, science-backed techniques like this every single week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Let's talk about why this matters. Fertilizer prices have climbed steadily over the last several years, and most gardeners just accept it as the cost of doing business. Every spring, another trip to the store, another $20 or $30, sometimes more, spent on something that promises big results but often delivers average ones. And here's the part that stings the most. While you're spending that money, your own lawn is quietly producing something nearly identical every single time you mow it. Most people never make that connection. They see grass clippings as mess, as yard waste, as something to get rid of as fast as possible. But what if the real secret to a thriving garden wasn't a product at all? What if it was a process, one that's been sitting right under your feet the whole time? Let's start with the biggest misunderstanding most gardeners have. Section 1. The nutrient goldmine you're bagging up and throwing away. Picture a woman named Karen. Every Saturday morning, rain or shine, she mows her lawn like clockwork. And every single time, she does what most Americans do without a second thought. She bags up the clippings and sets them out for pickup. Here's the mistake almost nobody realizes they're making. Fresh green grass clippings are loaded with nitrogen, potassium, amino acids, and beneficial organic compounds. This isn't a guess or a gardening myth. It's basic plant biology. Grass is actively growing and photosynthesizing when you cut it, which means it's absolutely packed with the exact nutrients plants need to build strong stems, healthy leaves, and vigorous new growth. So why does grass have so much nitrogen in the first place? Think of it like this. Nitrogen is essentially the building block plants use to create chlorophyll, the compound that makes leaves green and allows photosynthesis to happen at all. A lawn that's actively growing is constantly manufacturing and storing that nitrogen in its blades. When you mow, you're not creating waste. You're harvesting a nutrient-rich material at the exact moment it's most potent. So instead of bagging those clippings for the trash, the first step is simple. Start saving them. Set them aside in a bucket or a bin instead of sending them to the curb. That one small shift means what used to be considered garbage becomes the foundation for something far more valuable. A completely free, homemade fertilizer sitting right there in your yard. But here's where most people go wrong next. And it's the exact reason so many homemade fertilizer attempts fail before they even get started. Section 2. Why most homemade fertilizers actually fail. Meet a man named Frank. Frank heard that soaking grass clippings in water could make a kind of grass tea for his garden. So he filled up an old bucket, tossed in a few handfuls of clippings, and left it sitting in a corner of his yard for almost 2 weeks. What he got wasn't a fertilizer. It was a foul-smelling, sludgy mess that he eventually had to dump out and forget about. Here's why that happened, and it's a mistake that trips up even experienced gardeners. When grass clippings sit in still, stagnant water with no oxygen moving through it, the mixture becomes anaerobic. And in an anaerobic environment, the wrong kind of microorganisms take over. Instead of the beneficial bacteria that break plant matter down into usable nutrients, you get the kind that produce foul odors and, in some cases, compounds that can actually harm plants rather than help them. Think of it the same way you'd think about a pond that never gets fresh water moving through it versus a clear, flowing stream. One turns stagnant and unhealthy, the other stays alive and balanced. Your fertilizer mixture works exactly the same way. The fix is surprisingly simple. Introducing oxygen into the water, through aeration, keeps the beneficial aerobic microbes in control of the process instead of the harmful ones. Even something as basic as stirring the mixture several times a day or using a small aquarium air pump can completely change the outcome. The reward for getting this right is significant. No smell, no sludge, just a clean, nutrient-rich liquid your plants can actually absorb and use. Have you ever tried a homemade garden remedy that just didn't work the way you expected? This is usually why. It's rarely the ingredients that fail. It's almost always the process. And once the water and the oxygen are right, there's still one more detail most people skip completely, and it can either speed this whole process up or quietly slow it down. Section 3. The simple additions that unlock faster results. Consider a gardener named Diane. She wanted faster results, but she didn't want to spend a dime on anything new. So she started her grass fertilizer using water straight from her kitchen tap. The mistake here is a subtle one, and it's easy to overlook. Most municipal tap water contains chlorine, which is added specifically to kill microorganisms and keep the water supply safe to drink. That's great for your glass of water. It's terrible for the beneficial bacteria your fertilizer depends on to break down those nutrients. So what's the fix? Something almost embarrassingly simple. Letting tap water sit out in an open container for 24 hours allows much of the chlorine to naturally evaporate. Rainwater works even better, since it never had chlorine in it to begin with. Combine that chlorine-free water with the aeration from Section 2, a small pump, or just stirring the mixture several times a day, and you've created the ideal environment for beneficial microbes to multiply quickly. The result is a stronger, faster-acting liquid fertilizer that's ready in days instead of weeks. This is the difference between Frank's failed smelly bucket and a clean, effective fertilizer that actually delivers on its promise. But here's something important that most gardening videos never mention. Even a perfectly made fertilizer can still hurt your garden if you use it at the wrong time, on the wrong plants. Section 4. When this fertilizer works best, and when to hold back. Now picture a man named Robert. Once his fertilizer was ready, he got excited and poured it on every single plant in his yard. His tomatoes, his roses, his peppers, his lawn. All at once, all the same amount, without a second thought. Here's the hidden mistake. Not every plant benefits from a heavy dose of nitrogen at every stage of its life. Leafy vegetables like lettuce, spinach, and kale respond beautifully to nitrogen-rich feeding because their entire purpose is to grow lush, green leaves. Lawns respond the same way. But flowering and fruiting plants, tomatoes, peppers, roses, squash, tell a very different story once they start to bloom. Here's the simple science behind it. Nitrogen tells a plant to focus its energy on leafy, vegetative growth. That's wonderful early on. But once a plant shifts into flowering and fruiting mode, too much nitrogen can actually work against you, producing a plant with beautiful, thick green leaves but disappointing flowers and fruit. Robert didn't get bigger tomatoes. He got a tomato plant that looked incredible and produced far less than it should have. The solution is timing. Apply this fertilizer generously during a plant's active leafy growth stage. Early spring growth, young seedlings, and leafy greens throughout the season. Then, ease back once flowering and fruiting begins, shifting your focus to phosphorus and potassium-rich amendments instead. Get this timing right and you get balanced, healthy growth from root to fruit. Not just impressive-looking leaves at the expense of your actual harvest. And once you understand this timing, something remarkable becomes possible. The part of this story you've been waiting for. Section 5. The 5-day shift gardeners start to notice. Meet a woman named Melissa. She had a container tomato plant that had been stubbornly pale and slow all season, no matter what she tried. Out of options, she gave it a dose of her finished grass fertilizer, diluted properly, and simply waited. Most gardeners make one final mistake at this exact stage. They expect an overnight miracle, a plant that doubles in size by morning. That's not how real evidence-based gardening works, and any video promising that isn't being honest with you. Here's what actually happens. Within about 5 days, under good growing conditions, adequate sunlight, healthy soil, and consistent watering, plants that receive this fertilizer often begin showing deeper green color in their leaves, sturdier stems, and a noticeable return of vigor as available nitrogen gets absorbed through the root system. It's not explosive, it's not instant. It's real, measurable, biological progress you can actually see with your own eyes. The key to lasting results isn't a single application. It's consistency. Feeding your plants every couple of weeks during their active growth stage, the same way you'd maintain any healthy routine rather than expecting one lucky break to fix everything. The reward is a visibly healthier garden, built without spending another dollar at the garden center. And once you see that shift happen in your own yard, something interesting occurs. You start looking at everything differently. The leaves you rake in the fall, the coffee grounds you throw away, the eggshells in your trash. You start realizing your yard has been producing free resources this entire time. You just never knew how to use them. Conclusion. What looked like nothing more than yard waste turns out to be one of the most valuable resources sitting in any American backyard. This was never really a story about fertilizer. It's a story about paying closer attention to what's already around you and realizing that some of the best solutions were never sitting on a store shelf to begin with. If there's one thing to take from everything we've covered today, it's this. Before you spend another dollar on fertilizer, look at what your own lawn is already giving you every single week. Try this on one struggling plant in your own garden. Give it 2 weeks and watch what happens. If this video helped you see your garden a little differently, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, because there are even more overlooked resources sitting in your yard that most gardeners never think twice about. And speaking of overlooked resources, grass clippings aren't the only thing you've been throwing away that your garden has been quietly begging for. There's another one hiding in plain sight, and once you learn what it is, you'll never look at your kitchen scraps the same way again.